What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for clicking in. I have a very different video I want to do today. I have the knowledge that we may not be able to speak our minds like we have been able to on a forum like this for much longer. So I just wanted to make some videos as often as I can about some important subjects and things that I just would like some people to hear. Like most of my videos, this one's probably going to be rather long, and you just have to you have to be one of those people that like to listen to people talk. Like before I go to sleep, I usually put on a good video where I don't necessarily have to watch the screen. I can just listen to somebody's thoughts or listen to people talk. And so, if you've got a very short attention span, or you don't really care about the subject, or you really don't want to know what the Christian matrix is, um, you know, don't gripe about it in the comments. Everybody has the ability to click off. That being said, those that are still around, this is a hypothesis that I've had for a very long time about what this so-called matrix is that people have been talking about ever since the movie The Matrix has come out, and I'm sure they were some semblances of it before then. But I have a different view on what the matrix is, and I believe I am coining the phrase the Christian matrix here because there's lots of theories about the simulated universe is kind of the secular thought of what the Matrix is. I have a different idea of what the Matrix is, and I'm calling it now the Christian Matrix. I hope that I could probably come out with a better name, God's Matrix, anything like that. But I think Christian is kind of it gives the glory to Christ. I don't know if that's the best name for it. Regardless, let's call it the Christian Matrix. Anyway, after I got saved, I started, and this is just me and how I've always been. I want to know the big picture. And I was given, like a lot of Christians that are saved, I was giving a lot of just knowing that certain things were true, knowing that certain things were a certain way. A few examples were that I can see how Satan is working and how fake this world is and how the world's a stage. They have painted a picture of our reality through school, media, and so on. Every possible, the arts, music, movies, every way possible. And so let's begin. So scientists are even talking about the world we living in possibly being a simulation, and you can look that up, and they give a lot of good reasons why this is probably a simulation that we're living in. Their thoughts on it is that maybe some advanced being somewhere started a simulation because they would have computers or some sort of technology that could create another world, a virtual world, if you will, and that we're probably not even living in the original simulation, but their theory or hypothesis really is that the probability that we're in the original simulation or the original world, in fact, probability is really high that we're not in the first simulation or even in the original reality. My theory is that we're living in God's simulation, And this is going to be difficult to really put into words. Uh, you kind of have to know the baseline of what the spirit realm is according to the Bible by seeking that knowledge out. So, anyway, I hope to describe this as best as I can. And so, anyway, I've already explained that even in the secular world, uh, some scientists are saying and postulating and hypothesizing that this is a virtual world of some sort. And they have a lot of pretty good reasons to back that up. Some people call it the quantum world, this and that. This is a theory that's been out there a while. My theory is that this is God's simulation, or this is Jesus's simulation. Now, I don't know all the answers on this, but this is a feeling or a knowing I got after being saved. And I've always really thought about what we're doing here, why we're here, this and that. And after 30 something years of really trying to find that out, that's eventually how I got saved, was seeking the truth. Now, I'm ashamed to say it took me 30 something years to realize it, but nevertheless, I got there. And I'm telling you all, the Bible is what's going on around us. That's what's happening. And let me try to explain this theory, or I'm gonna call it a hypothesis. I don't think it warrants being a theory. I just want to say at the beginning of this, listen to my disclaimers before making any comments. I'm big on disclaimers. Uh, I believe this hypothesis um, it gives all glory to God. I don't believe it affects salvation. I think that it glorifies God and just how powerful and all-knowing He is. So, like I said, bear with me. This isn't an easy thing to explain. I haven't heard this theory really anywhere else. So, we all know there's a hypothesis out there. This is a virtual world. Well, I believe that there was a war in heaven, and I also believe in the gap theory. And I don't have all this worked out, and there isn't a whole lot of information about the world that was before the one we're living in. But look up the gap theory because I can't explain every little thing in this video or it'll be hours long. But the gap theory basically suggests that there was another time before God made this realm. And, the earth was void and without form, it says in Genesis. Well, there's good reason to believe that there was another world before this one, and this is before the flood. We're talking about, a total new creation of this realm, and you have to look up the gap theory. But there was a war in heaven, and I believe that that happened in the time before this realm. He made the earth void and without form because of what happened to the last one. And so I believe that there was a war in heaven, and Satan talked a third of the angels to rebel against God with him. And I also believe that everything I'm saying here was part of God's plan to begin with, to eventually end up with New Jerusalem. And you've got to realize that God can see in the future. He can see all the way into the past, just like He had a video of it. He knows it all. I also believe that He can intervene in our lives and there's a lot of testimonies of people that met Jesus, and there's a channel called Precious Testimonies on YouTube, and they also have a website, and they have amazing testimonies there. And in a few of them, I noticed a few of them were basically shown the same thing by Jesus. And so they were saying that Jesus showed them how he could look way into eternity's past and way into eternity's future. And he can also pick you out and show you your whole life and show you where he saved you this time, or he gave you this time. And that gives glory to God. A lot of Christians don't really grasp how all-knowing and powerful God is, but you just got to think this is God. He created everything and knows the numbers. He knows how many hairs you have on your head. He created all this stuff. And anyway, so I believe, and I've also looked into pre-existence. I'm very interested in where we were before we were born into this realm. And it does say in the Bible that he knew us before we were born. So therefore we were, I believe, in the war in heaven, or created right after the war in heaven. And so anyway, uh, after this war in heaven, I believe God had to build a new realm, and actually it was part of his plan the whole time. He's building and destroying and redoing, just kind of like he did later on with the flood. He's so vast, there's no unexpected things that happen to God, basically. And so he started this new realm, created Adam and Eve. They were probably spirits that were up in heaven. I believe we're different than angels. Angels are above us because they're still in the spirit realm, but we are a separate creation designed to eventually end up in the new heaven or new Jerusalem. And so this is really kind of complicated to describe, but I feel like this is what's going on. And we're kind of not meant to know this, but anyway, because we forget everything we know from when we're in heaven, when we come down here. So I believe he's doing all this to eventually end up in New Jerusalem and perfect heaven. And he had to do a lot of things in order and in order to wrap all this up perfectly and fairly and everything. So since there was a rebellion, he's made this new earth. Adam and Eve came down. We sinned. He knew that was going to happen. He knew that Satan was going to do what he did, because this is all part of the grand design. God is not surprised by much, I'm sure, if anything. So we're all living in this lower reality than we're living in heaven. And in heaven is actually the real place, and earth is the matrix, is the virtual reality. And when I say this is the virtual reality compared to heaven, that probably doesn't give that justice. It's much more complex than that, but that's the best term I can use to describe, since this is the matrix of heaven, basically. And that's also a cool term. So we're down here since we rebelled, and I believe we either didn't have anything to do with the war in heaven, and I think possibly we could have had something, we could have been around during the war in heaven, and either fought against God, or we didn't get involved. And so that's why all that has to be reconciled here in the current existence that humans are living in. And so basically, we're all down here deciding who will end up in heaven at the end of it all. Because can you have a heaven with thieves and people who are just not righteous at all? They don't have a decent bone within their spirit body, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? That makes sense. God is going to have the perfect heaven, New Jerusalem, at the end of all this. And I believe it's going to be rather soon. You can see it kind of starting to amp up big time. I used to laugh at the thought. I was like, nah, how do you know? There's just too much stuff going on pointing towards we're at least gearing up, if not already in the end times. And so this is a hypothesis, a gut feeling, a knowing that I have, and I didn't get any confirmation of my beliefs in this. This is what's kind of going on. If you could step back and kind of get a glimpse of what God's doing a little bit from His perspective, as much as a human can possibly try to explain it. But I was, like I said earlier, I was watching uh, two or three testimonies from Precious Testimonies channel and website, and these especially these two gentlemen that were giving their testimonies, they they described how God showed them their lives and how they both said that he could pick out their life and show them all these things in their certain life. And I'd also like to mention synchronicities in here. If you look up synchronicities and you study or read any books about what other people have that studied it, the common theme is if you're seeing synchronicities, you are taking the right path. A lot of the explanations for that is quantum or some foo-foo new age ideas, but what it really is, it's a part of this matrix that God has made, and He is nudging you to go in these certain directions because that's the plan. But you also have a choice not to. And the closer you are to God and the better you can hear God, the more you can follow the path He wants you to take, and the better off you are, and the better off everyone else is also. So I believe we're living in this matrix where God has this unbelievable plan, and also in these two guys' testimonies. And you know what? I'm going to put the links to these two specific testimonies in the description below because I believe you would greatly benefit from listening to these testimonies about them meeting Jesus. And so, anyway, these testimonies actually confirmed a lot of what I believe, but um, God doesn't explain everything. There's a reason why when we are born here on earth, we don't remember everything we do in heaven. This is a test. Once you're born here, you don't really remember. You don't have all that knowledge you've had as a spirit uh, child of God, up in heaven. This is a virtual reality where we come down and we forget most of our knowledge. It's a very tough, dare I say, game, a very serious game. And again, when I say game or virtual reality, it's not really that, but that's the closest terms I can have to describe. That's the closest thing we have to really put it to. And so, uh, in their testimonies, they say that even, because they could see all the way up to New Jerusalem and past that, One of them described how perfect the plan was. Even all the people that have uh, been wronged, and like children in Africa having AIDS, all of that was for a reason. Okay, this is the important part. Listen, all of these bad things and wars and all that, you can't really describe it until we get to that point, but we will all see how perfectly and how just and fair and everything had a reason for happening. And because this isn't the real reality, the consequences and the things that happen down here aren't quite as tough as it seems. For instance, if you die in a video game, you might be mad because you lost a lot of work or something, but it's not that serious. You see what I'm saying? So even when children die, wars happen, things like that, it will all make sense, and I always give all trust to God. He's not going to make mistakes. He is fair and just, and he has it all worked out. And I'm at this point in my walk where I'm just leaving it up to Jesus, and it's going everything's happening the way it should. One thing I found interesting in one of the testimonies, again, check these out. The links will be in the description. I want to make sure I do that because they are powerful, and I believe them. After listening to a lot of sightings, accounts, and stuff. I know a lot of you out there will be like me, just kind of get a vibe if somebody's telling the truth or not. And these guys are telling the truth. At the very least, they think that happened to them, but I know it happened to them, and I believe them. So anyway, this one gentleman, he'll be the man with the white beard. He said that all everything made sense, and even the children dying and all that makes sense. But he said that at the end of it, it all was wrapped up and was perfect. Everybody that eventually had to die in the lake of fire knew that they deserved to be there, and that it was fair. All the people that ended up getting to go to heaven and really didn't believe that they deserved it, they knew it will all be fair and just and make sense. So you just have to have faith that this is all part of the plan. And although it's a serious game, all these things are happening for a reason. And he said that there was also free will involved in when God can see the future. You can he knows things that are for sure going to happen. There's also things that can have slight variances depending on what we do here. So we all have a little part in exactly how things end up in New Jerusalem. So it's hard to fathom, and I don't claim to know the entire picture of this, but I do have that uh, a little bit higher view than I did before. And like I said, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it wasn't until I got to watch and stumble upon these gentlemen's testimonies and other things I've read and other testimonies. But these two guys' testimonies from Precious Testimonies website and YouTube channel really hit me on the head, and I said, I'm convinced this is what is kind of actually happening. And because you get a lot of people that deny God's existence because something bad happens to them, and they say, well, why would God take my child from me? And that's not the way you need to look at it. It's this reality, and also an important thing to note in one of these gentlemen's testimonies is that, and I believe this is again the man in the white beard. He said that this reality, because he says he actually met Jesus and was taken to Jesus, and Jesus, you couldn't see through him. He was real, and he was more real than we are. And that points to this being a matrix like reality we're in, because he said this was like a crayon drawing on the back of a napkin compared to what our real original spirit bodies are living in. So I really do think we are in a Christian matrix. God's matrix might even be a better term. And so I believe all these theories that we're in the Matrix, and you know how that does kind of ring true with most people, and that's why the movie The Matrix was successful, although it was very far off, and although this theory is being used to, of course, deny God because we're just living in some simulation. What I'm saying, we're living in God's simulation, God's matrix. And I believe that most people are hearing the other theory that this is just a matrix. There is no God. Either an alien or some kind of being has made a computer simulation, and that's what we're living in. Again, the devil put some truth in there, and he twists it with some lies. And that's what I see over and over again, is that's what happens. I would like to know what you guys think about this. If you have any thoughts, if you have any more clues that this is actually what's happening, please put them in the comments, and I will try to interact with you in the comments. I'll check them as often as I can. Um, but please do that. And if you have any solid proof that this isn't what's going on, and you are taking the biblical lens through it, and you have some obvious proof, I would like to hear that too. But I really feel like this is what's happening because, like I touched on a minute ago, I think we all kind of have this subconscious knowing that this is like a simulation. And so, what I believe is God has put us, and I'm going to summarize it right here. I believe that God has put us in a simulation to figure out who needs to be in heaven walking with Him and who gets to live out eternity, because you can't have a lot of criminals and rapists and things like that, bad souls, the wheat and the tares. This is why all this is happening, is so that God can eventually wrap up and weed out and come out with beings that he can actually, his children, that he can actually have a heaven with, because there was a war in heaven and things got messed up. Again, I give all glory to God, and I believe that was probably his intention in the first place. He needed Satan to rebel and some angels to fall with him. He needed all these things to happen. He needs the demons on earth to attack us and to test us. They don't have any power to do that with it to us without his authority. He controls everything. I believe that even how powerful Satan is, there's no way Satan's going to win this. It's out of the possibility that Satan could defeat God. It's not going to ever happen. And so that's why I also believe Satan is actually a pawn. And check this out. I've thought about this last night. Satan is God's devil's advocate. And think about that for a minute, and I'll try to explain it. God knew Satan was going to rebel, and he needed him to, because of the certain conditions he needs to happen on this planet. This life would have been hard enough without demons being able to possess the totally unchristian, without demons to tempt Christians. And that was all part of the matrix and the things he needed to happen here to have his perfect results. If you want something to be perfect, you would have to have all these things line up and to naturally evolve, just like we had to have free will in order for this all to be real on a deep level. Because if you have children that you want to be with, they need free will, because what good would it be if they were all forced to be there in the first place? Anyway, I kind of got this, and I was thinking about this for a long time, and then I finally, when I listened to these two gentlemen's testimonies, it all kind of hit me, and this is what I actually believe, although I call it a hypothesis, because it's something we're really probably not meant to know. But I believe this is the plan, a higher uh, kind of a, I think this is a higher view of the plan that most people have ever had. So I believe that's it. Hope I explained it. This wasn't an easy thing to explain. I hope those who were meant to hear it will get it. In my defense, and I hope I made it clear in this video, that I believe God is so powerful, so all-knowing, that this is not blasphemous in any way. It is not meant to be. I believe this is a better matrix hypothesis than what is out there, because the other matrix theory is we're living in a simulation that doesn't involve God. Well, what I'm saying, this is a simulation made by God, and is all part of His plan to eventually get to New Jerusalem. And I hope you realize what an awesome plan that is, and how complex and everything else it is. And so that's my hypothesis slash theory slash my personal belief on what the matrix really is, instead of the opposite matrix explanation that doesn't involve God. Let me know what you think in the comments. Can't wait to hear them. Like and subscribe if you already haven't. I'm going to take a line from Richie from Boston. Like and subscribe, or don't. Later.